Your silence carries more power than your explanations. Self-focus creates inner authority and natural respect. Protecting your energy is a sign of maturity, not weakness. Not everyone deserves access to your emotions. When you rise above reactions, people rise to respect you. There comes a moment in your life when you get tired of explaining yourself to people who were never listening in the first place. You wake up one day and realize that your peace is too precious, your purpose is too powerful, and your growth is too sacred to hand it over to every opinion that crosses your path. And that's the moment, right there, when silence becomes your strength. Because silence isn't weakness. Silence is wisdom. Silence is discipline. Silence is the language of someone who knows who they are without needing applause, validation, or approval. You don't have to prove your worth to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. You don't have to defend your heart to people who never had the capacity to hold it. Life will teach you that the more you focus on them, the more you lose yourself. But the more you focus on yourself, the more you rise, the more you heal, the more you reclaim the pieces of you that you once scattered trying to be understood. There is a version of you that is unstoppable, unshakable, and unbothered. And you meet that version not through arguments, but through alignment. So let them talk. Let them assume. Let them create stories that were never your truth. Your silence will reveal what your explanations never could. Because when you choose growth over noise, purpose over reaction, and focus over frustration, respect doesn't just come to you. It rises from within you. And when you rise, the world eventually learns to rise with you. Silence carries a power that most people overlook because they are too busy trying to prove something, defend something, or protect something. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, to respond, to justify themselves, silence becomes not just rare but sacred. It becomes the mark of someone who has learned that true strength isn't loud, and true confidence doesn't tremble for validation. Silence teaches you to rise above the noise rather than drown in it. When you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim your energy from battles that were never meant to belong to you. Silence becomes the quiet declaration that you know who you are without needing anyone else to stamp it with approval. It becomes the boundary that separates your purpose from their projections. People expect reactions. They expect explanations. They expect you to defend every move you make and every decision you choose. But when you choose silence, you interrupt their expectations. You show them that your worth is not up for debate, and your identity is not a community project. Silence is where you meet your own thoughts without the distortion of outside opinions. It is the space where clarity rises and emotional maturity deepens. When you refuse to respond to every criticism or challenge, you train your mind to stop reacting impulsively and start responding intentionally. You give yourself permission to rise above what doesn't deserve your spirit. Silence gives you room to breathe, room to grow, room to realign with who you truly are. And the more you strengthen that inner alignment, the less control other people have over you. People might misread your silence as weakness, but silence is actually one of the strongest decisions you can make. It means you are no longer controlled by other people's narratives. It means you have stopped allowing their noise to shape your identity. It means you have chosen peace over chaos, wisdom over impulse, and growth over argument. Silence also has a psychological effect on people. It makes them more aware of their own behavior because they no longer have your words to counterbalance their actions. They hear their own tone, their own accusations, their own judgments, but without your defense to soften it. Suddenly, they are left alone with the truth of how they show up. Silence forces self-reflection in others more powerfully than any explanation could. It shifts the dynamic. It silently communicates that you are not playing on their level anymore. Silence protects your energy because it stops you from pouring yourself into cups that are cracked, empty, or unwilling to hold what you offer. It gives you the space to invest energy back into your purpose, your healing, your growth, and your peace. When you stop wasting your spirit on proving yourself to people who already made up their minds, you redirect that power into building yourself instead. That is where your confidence grows. That is where your self-respect strengthens. That is where your life starts shifting. Silence is not about shutting down. It is about tuning out everything that distracts you from your assignment. It is choosing stillness so you can hear your intuition more clearly. It is deciding that your emotional capacity is too valuable to hand over to anyone who has not earned the right to hold it. Silence allows you to observe people without reacting to them, to see the truth without engaging the drama, and to understand the situation without losing your peace. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of defending yourself and explains without words that you have stepped into a new level of maturity. People notice when you stop reacting. They notice when you become more selective with your energy. They notice when you no longer engage in the emotional tug of war they once used to pull you into. And whether they admit it or not, this shift creates respect. Not because you demanded it, not because you argued for it, but because you demonstrated it through discipline. Silence reveals your strength, your boundaries, your confidence, and your ability to stay grounded, even when someone wants to pull you into chaos. It separates you from the noise of the world and connects you with the power within yourself. When you shift your focus from other people to yourself, something powerful begins to happen inside you. You stop chasing approval and start nurturing identity. You stop apologizing for your growth and start honoring your evolution. Self-focus is not selfishness. It is self-stability. It is the quiet commitment to knowing who you are, what you carry, and what you deserve before letting the world speak into you. When you put your energy into understanding your emotions, building your discipline, strengthening your purpose, and healing your wounds, you naturally develop an inner authority that others cannot ignore. Respect begins on the inside long before it appears on the outside. People can sense when you are rooted. They can feel when you are connected to a deeper purpose. They respond differently when your confidence doesn't come from applause, but from alignment. And alignment only grows when you place your focus on healing, elevating, and disciplining yourself rather than managing the perceptions of others. When you focus on yourself, you no longer waste time overthinking who likes you, who supports you, who doubts you, or who misunderstands you. You stop performing and start becoming. You begin to walk in a way that is grounded, intentional, and unshakable. The opinions that once felt heavy begin to lose their weight because you learn to anchor yourself in truth rather than noise. Self-focus teaches you to evaluate what truly matters and release what drains your spirit. You start paying attention to what triggers you, what strengthens you, what distracts you, and what elevates you. You start treating your life like something valuable instead of something that must constantly be explained. The more you study yourself, the more self-control you gain. And self-control is one of the rarest and most respected traits a person can have. When you know how to regulate your emotions, hold your boundaries, remain calm in chaos, and stay committed to your vision, people take notice. Most people spend their lives reacting, defending, and explaining. But when you choose to focus inward, you rise above reaction and step into intention. You become the kind of person who moves differently, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. You know what deserves your time and what doesn't. You know who deserves access and who doesn't. You know which battles are worth fighting and which ones are meant to be walked away from. This level of inner clarity commands respect without you having to raise your voice or prove your worth. People respect those who respect themselves, and self-respect comes from doing the work that no one else sees. The private battles, the silent healing, the difficult choices, the moments where you choose discipline over comfort, all of that builds a person who stands tall from the inside out. When your focus is internal, you also become less emotionally reactive. You learn to pause instead of panic. You learn to observe instead of absorb. You learn to respond with wisdom instead of reacting with impulse. This emotional maturity is something people deeply respect, even if they never say it. When someone sees that you don't get easily shaken, they subconsciously place you in a different category. They trust your presence. They value your voice. They recognize your stability. And stability is something people admire because it is something most people struggle to find within themselves. When you carry stability, You become the person others look to for guidance, but you didn't achieve it by explaining yourself. You achieved it by focusing on yourself. Another reason self-focus creates respect is because it elevates your standards. When you work on yourself, your environment begins to shift. You no longer tolerate the disrespect you once excused. You no longer accept the bare minimum you once allowed. Your growth becomes the filter that separates who should stay close and who must stay distant. And when people see that you have standards, they either rise to meet them or step aside. High standards are not about being better than anyone else. They are about refusing to shrink yourself to fit environments that could never hold your potential. And when people see you protecting your standards, they learn to treat you differently. Focusing on yourself also makes you harder to manipulate because you know your value too well to allow someone else to define it. You stop bending to fit people's expectations, and you stop allowing their opinions to dictate your emotional weather. People respect those who cannot be easily moved by external noise. When your confidence is rooted in internal work instead of external validation, you become untouchable in a way that is quiet but unmistakable. Nothing is more powerful than someone who has taken the time to build themselves, heal themselves, and understand themselves. That is the kind of person others respect. Not because they demanded it, but because they embodied it. Protecting your energy is one of the deepest signs of maturity because it means you finally understand the value of your inner world. You begin to realize that not every conversation deserves a response. Not every comment deserves your emotion, and not every person deserves access to your peace. There was a time when you might have given yourself away easily. Your time, your attention, your thoughts, your loyalty, because you wanted to be understood, accepted, or appreciated. But maturity teaches you that constantly pouring yourself out for everyone is the fastest way to run empty. Protecting your energy is the moment you recognize that peace is not accidental, it is intentional. And intention requires boundaries, discipline, and the courage to disappoint people who thrive on your openness but do nothing to protect it. As you grow, you start to recognize the difference between people who genuinely value your presence and people who only value your availability. You see the difference between those who come to bring peace and those who come to take it. Protecting your energy means you stop entertaining relationships that drain your spirit. You pull back from environments where your heart feels heavy. You distance yourself from people who leave you emotionally exhausted instead of emotionally supported. And the more you do this, the clearer your mind becomes. You stop absorbing the energy of every room you walk into, and instead, you start choosing rooms that align with your growth. This shift doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from wisdom. It comes from understanding that the version of you that is growing, healing, and evolving needs protection, nourishment, and space to breathe. When you protect your energy, you stop feeling guilty for saying no. You stop feeling afraid of creating distance. You stop apologizing for prioritizing yourself. Maturity teaches you that saying yes to everything is not kindness, it is self-neglect. You learn that protecting your energy doesn't make you cold. It makes you careful. It makes you selective. It makes you intentional about where you place your heart. And people may not always understand this version of you, especially if they were used to the version of you who gave endlessly without questioning the cost. But your growth is not meant for their approval. It is meant for your survival. Protecting your energy also means becoming aware of how certain behaviors affect your emotional state. You start to recognize that overthinking drains you, that reacting too quickly exhausts you, that trying to fix people who refuse to change weakens you. You start paying attention to how conversations make you feel, how certain environments shift your mood, how certain interactions leave you spiritually tired. This awareness pushes you to create boundaries that honor your well-being. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They allow you to choose what comes in and what must stay out. And when you finally embrace this kind of emotional awareness, you start to feel a strength inside you that you may have never known before. It is the strength of someone who is no longer controlled by chaos, who no longer allows external negativity to steal their internal stability. There is also a psychological transformation that happens when you protect your energy. You begin to think clearer, respond wiser, and move more intentionally. Your emotional reactions become less impulsive because you no longer let everyone touch your spirit. You stop allowing people to trigger you so easily. You stop responding to drama. You stop engaging in unnecessary conflict. You become more grounded, more centered, more confident in your silence. When you are selective about what enters your space, your mind becomes a sanctuary instead of a battlefield. This mental clarity increases your emotional intelligence and strengthens your ability to navigate life with grace instead of frustration. People notice when you begin to protect your energy. They notice when your access becomes earned rather than assumed. They notice when your presence becomes intentional rather than automatic. And even if they never say it, that shift commands respect. Because people respect what is protected. They respect what is valued. They respect what is not easily obtained. When you take your energy seriously, others learn to take you seriously as well. Protecting your energy is not about withdrawal. It is about choosing wisely. It is about recognizing that your spirit is not a public playground, but a sacred space that deserves honor. When you treat your energy with value, you begin to walk in a strength that doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists, quietly powerful, confidently grounded, and undeniably respected. Not everyone deserves access to your emotions, and the moment you understand this, your life begins to feel lighter, clearer, and more intentional. Your emotions are not meant to be handed out like free samples to anyone who happens to walk into your day. They are sacred, powerful, and deeply connected to your sense of identity. As you grow and mature, you begin to realize that allowing the wrong people to influence your emotions is one of the most draining and damaging patterns you can fall into. Some people don't just take your emotions. They twist them, exploit them, or use them against you. Maturity is when you finally understand that sharing your emotions is a privilege, not a requirement. There are people who seek access to your emotions not because they care about you, but because your reactions fuel their need for control or validation. They poke at your insecurities, they test your patience, they provoke responses because your emotional reactions give them a sense of power. When you stop giving them that access, you weaken their influence over your life. When you stop reacting to every slight, every insult, every misunderstanding, you shift the dynamic completely. You show that your emotions are not a playground for other people's immaturity. You show that you are no longer available for emotional chaos. And this shift is transformative, not just for your peace, but for your sense of self-worth. Not everyone has the emotional maturity to hold your truth with care. Some people mishandle your vulnerability because they never learned how to manage their own. They don't know how to communicate gently. They don't know how to listen deeply. And they don't know how to respond respectfully. If a person cannot handle their own emotions, they are not qualified to handle yours. When you understand this, you become more selective about who you share your heart with. You stop oversharing with people who haven't earned your trust. You stop offering explanations to people who only want to argue. You stop seeking comfort from people who have shown you repeatedly that they cannot provide it. You learn to guard your heart not out of fear, but out of wisdom. When you withhold emotional access from the wrong people, you give yourself space to heal without interference. You give yourself time to think without pressure. You give yourself permission to grow without being judged for the process. Emotional access is powerful, and in the wrong hands, it can become destructive, but in the right hands, it becomes healing. This is why discernment is so important. You must learn to read intentions, not words. You must learn to observe patterns, not promises. You must learn to trust actions, not apologies. When someone consistently shows you that they cannot hold your emotions safely, it is not your job to keep giving them chances. It is your job to stop giving them access. Restricting emotional access doesn't mean shutting down or becoming cold. It means becoming wise. It means you still have emotions, but you choose where to place them. You choose who gets close enough to impact your heart. You choose who gets to hear your fears, your joy, your pain, your dreams. Your emotions deserve to be held by people who respect them, honor them, and protect them. When you start filtering your emotional access, you stop feeling drained by people who only take. You stop feeling overwhelmed by situations that once consumed you. You stop losing yourself, trying to care for people who never cared for you in return. There is also strength in emotional privacy. When you stop announcing every feeling, people can no longer use your emotions as a weapon. When you stop reacting publicly, you maintain control of your narrative. When you stop explaining how you feel to those who are determined to misunderstand you, you preserve your peace. Emotional privacy gives you a sense of power because it allows you to process your feelings without outside influence. It helps you make better decisions because your choices are no longer shaped by the opinions or manipulations of others. The truth is, people value what they can't easily access. When your emotions are available to everyone,